Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we have a question from a Veterlit Torf who asked, "Hey Thor, I've been wondering about droid sentience lately and why Star Wars rarely takes it seriously. I even think that people applauding clone sentience and individuality is a bit of a double standard when those same people dismiss droids as merely extensions of their creators, even though Rex famously denies this. The fact is that clones are programmed to obey orders without question and are manufactured. Most clones only have a limited independent thinking, and a clone being able to live outside a military is incredibly rare. The only reason they develop individuality is because of experience. But the funny thing is, droids develop individuality for the same reason. The only difference is that droids regularly have their memories wiped specifically to prevent them from developing individuality and potentially rebelling. There's a moment in Heir to the Empire where Luke is asked why he has never wiped C-3PO's memories in all the years he's known him, and Luke reveals that he's uncomfortable with the idea of stripping his friend of individuality. And I don't know if you have played KOTOR 2 yet, but there's a mission where HK-47 argues with HK-50, who dismisses him as obsolete. But HK-47 argues that he is superior because he has developed individuality and has given himself a higher purpose and meaning because he has never had his mind wiped. These examples show that droid sentience should not be played for laughs so much in the franchise. In fact, I think the galaxy is overdue for a galaxy-wide droid revolution just to show people that sentient droids deserve equal treatment. This is actually addressed in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Measure of a Man, where Lieutenant Data's rights are debated because he's an android, and I wish Star Wars had something similar. What do you think? And I certainly think there's the potential for a really interesting story to be told about droids or with droids in Star Wars. A relevant one when you consider kind of what's going on in the world right now with AI, or what it feels like we might be on the cusp of when it comes to AI. That we may very well have basically sentient robots in the not too distant future, or droids, I suppose you could call them. I mean, I know I often say I don't want Star Wars to be a reflection of the modern world necessarily, that it should be more a reflection of what it has created over the past 5 decades now. But when I say that, when I say I don't want to see a reflection of the modern world, what I really mean is I don't necessarily want to see today's headlines showing up in Star Wars and likely being a one-sided lecture about how someone feels about that modern topic. But finding a way to tell an interesting and compelling story about droid intelligence or droid sentience or droids rising up and trying to gain rights, essentially. Doing something like that in Star Wars that is, maybe a bit of a commentary or kind of a question about the current state of things here in our world, and again, the potential future state of AI, is something I certainly wouldn't be against. I'm always arguing for Star Wars to have meaning, to have important themes and universal messages that will stand the test of time. And certainly a story about AI is going to be very relevant in the future, I would imagine. They may even look back 50 years from now at our stories and say, wow, you had it all wrong, for good or bad. Anyway, yes, Star Wars can and should cover important topics. That is essentially what Lucas was trying to do. He wanted young people to watch that first movie and to ask themselves the big questions about life. He wanted them to think about their place and purpose in the world. And speaking of George Lucas, it is interesting to note that he once said, and I don't remember the exact quote, so forgive me, nor could I find it after a quick search, so maybe someone knows it and could put it in the comments below, but he once said something to the effect that all the different species of the galaxy had gotten over their prejudices and were able to work together and see each other as equals and all that good stuff. But that most still had a dislike and or distrust of droids, that they were still kind of discriminated against. Hence that scene in A New Hope about your droids not being welcomed here when they go into the cantina. Lucas basically said or kind of proposed the idea that people always need something or will always find something to be afraid of and to mistreat. And in Star Wars, it's droids. And once again, that is not an exact quote or anything, but it was something along these lines. Anyway, if you look at the world around us right now, there is absolutely a lot of uncertainty, if not fear, of AI and what it will do or become or how it will change us or how it will change our lives. Everything from people afraid of losing their jobs to it, which is already happening, to it destroying humanity somehow, probably Skynet style, because it maybe sees us as useless or too petty, or it feels like it has evolved beyond us, beyond its creator, and we need to go for whatever reason. And really, I think it's a topic that interests a lot of people. I think a really good, well-told story that is compelling about droid sentience and maybe a droid revolution, whatever it might technically be about, I think that could draw a lot of attention to Star Wars, a lot of good attention. I think you may get a lot of people very interested in a story just like that, as long as, of course, it has its space battles and cool stuff in it. I know people love spectacle in Star Wars, and as I've said before, I'm cool with the spectacle. I think Star Wars should have it. But it needs substance, and this could be a very substance-heavy story, because it does involve perhaps the future of us. Not to mention it could draw attention to people who really haven't thought too much about the AI topic, and I think we all really should be talking about this. I'm personally in the camp of being leery yet hopeful when it comes to AI. Certainly, sure, there's a lot of potential to do good with it, but I think one of my biggest fears, short of the robots or droids killing us all, is that we'll become something like the movie WALL-E, where we all become pure consumers and don't create virtually anything anymore. I mean, sure, it sounds great to, say, never have to work again and for all your needs to be tended to and to spend your whole life just kinda sitting back enjoying entertainment or whatever you want to be entertained by. But I have to agree with HK47 when he talked about how he was the superior being because he had a purpose, he had a place and a purpose. I'm of the belief that people too need a place and a purpose of some kind. Now, it doesn't have to be a grand purpose or a higher calling or anything quite like that, but I just feel like people need to feel like they do something and have, again, some type of place and purpose beyond just existing. Either way, I'm just not a fan of the idea of AI becoming so advanced, not that anything is likely to stop this from happening, but I'm not a fan of it becoming so advanced and or prevalent in society that it pushes very talented people out of creative spaces, or simply leaves no room for them, or very little room. I don't want to think we'll miss out on getting the next Star Wars or discovering the next George Lucas, or pick whatever examples you want, because we have AI making all our movies now and that it's so cheap that way that we would never again imagine having people make them the old-fashioned way, short of the occasional novelty of having it made the, again, old-school way, I suppose. And don't get me wrong, I'm more than okay with AI being used as a tool in creative spaces or in creative processes or to save time on tedious tasks, that it can be, for example, maybe a sort of shortcut while making a video game that you can ask it to fill in the background, essentially. But when we get to the point where you can ask it to simply make the whole game when no person is creating virtually any part of it, short of asking the question or telling it what to create in the first place, then I think we lose something very, very important as a people and a society, as a species even. We ironically lose the creativity and drive that got us to this point in the first place. And all of this then, of course, also leads to the question of how do we treat AI? What are we going to do when we create some type of true artificial sentience? Will we be like Star Wars and treat them like a lot of characters in Star Wars treat droids, as just something that is used as a tool and that is oftentimes kind of disrespected and looked down upon? And what happens when the droids we create do have something akin to emotions, when they can feel something? Will we still treat them the same way? Will we give them rights? Or what will we do? And yeah, as you point out in your question, a lot of these questions were essentially asked in the Measure of a Man episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is worth a watch even if you have never seen anything else Star Trek. It is a fascinating episode. And so, yeah, I think Star Wars could be the perfect place to explore a lot of these questions. It may bring attention to those who maybe haven't been asking these questions, and it may draw the interest of those who have. And it is already baked right in there. You mentioned the clones, you could have a compare and contrast with them, of course. But either way, we already have droids that very much feel and act like sentient beings and seem to have emotions as well as fears and all of the rest of it. Not to mention, a lot of our favorite characters are droids, so there's already that personal or emotional connection to a lot of them. So some kind of war against the droids or some kind of uprising or whatever it might be to perhaps show their side and not just making them murderous droids for the sake of having big battles and all that stuff. It could get a lot of us starting to ask the questions we may literally as a species be facing in the not too distant future. Well, that is all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about AI or what you think about the idea of a droid uprising story in Star Wars. Would that be a perfect fit given the state of the world, or maybe just something that wouldn't work? Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.